Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, Saturday show, but we're doing it very early. And as you can see, and our editor has termed this as the caveman and the gentleman. I'll leave it to any of those of you who are watching to work out who's who. Anyhow, Steve, lovely to see you, my friend. What a fantastic setting you're in, and you look amazing.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you live today from Royal Ascot inside a very quiet Royal enclosure. It is well, it's the quietest I've ever seen it. I think the crowds normally here are topping 500,000, and there's only 12,000 allowed to be present. This is an event that is part of the government testing events testing program. So although we're all dressed up to the nines, there's one thing missing. There's no masks.
Yes.
Which is fabulous. There's no social distancing, and there are no masks. And it's the first time I've been able to sort of say that in more than 12 months, which is fabulous. And it is part of the government pilot, as I say, which is why. So we've been tested twice before we arrived. Tested this morning, tested yesterday, and we're tested again 5 days after the last race, which is on, or the last race day meet, which is on Saturday. So yeah, good progress I think being made at all this stuff, and it's just so sad that it's so very quiet.
Yeah, and did was there any reference to the vaccinations? People who've been vaccinated, or
no?
That come into it just down to the testing?
No, it was just testing. But interestingly, I mean, some of the news on the vaccines today, I've seen UK governments suggesting or confirming that they are thinking now about opening up travel for those that have been fully vaccinated from July.
Yep. Long overdue, and without quarantine coming back.
No quarantine, and the NHS launched the COVID pass yesterday, which allows you now for events like this to use the app to confirm you've either been vaccinated or been tested. So it's I think we're small steps, Chris, towards normality. I haven't had my morning suit and top hat on for quite a while, so it was a bit of a rigmarole this morning getting dressed. But anyway, it's great to be back.
Beautiful. Right, Stevie. Last week we said that we were going to talk this week about training and the new needs and why training should be treated differently, and is there too much training? Are there too many options? What benefit in some cases does event-based training have when within 3 months or so everything that's been taught has been forgotten and it doesn't relate to the real on the job experience? So we've been speaking a lot now about types of training and having it now more defined, and this Bring Back Better gives them an opportunity to do so. Now, there's huge amounts of debate, dialogue, communication, comment on LinkedIn, and one gentleman I was looking at in particular, his name's Geoffrey Wade, and he really sparked a lot of comment off, but it was really, really good to hear so many people's point of view. Now, Steve, Bring Back Better. Nice, simple question. How should we do things differently? And why should we be doing things differently? And when you get people to come training now, we should be telling them what for, not just that they have to attend for a tick box exercise, or that it's to do with accreditation, or that it's quotas or numbers. You agree?
I of course agree 100%, Chris. I think the reality is, and we at the risk of repeating something we were discussing last year, around about competency, competencies, compliance and training, which all go hand in hand. Measuring competencies, identifying gaps, using training to fill some of those gaps, not just a tick box exercise from a regulatory perspective, which is what historically, these training events have been there to do. In fact, I was just having a conversation this morning with a client about exactly that, around crisis management and ERP, emergency response procedures, and so on. So I'm just going to move slightly away from the announcer here. So if you don't mind, we'll walk you around Ascot Racecourse.
That's very nice, mate. Yeah.
But no, look, Chris, I think the reality is that we have had historically a culture that trains to tick a box rather than trains to deliver an outcome. And so we need to consider, how effectively we use outcome-based training, and actually measuring competencies post-training, ensuring that we have closed those gaps. And I think that needs the whole training world, Chris, and the model to turn. We need to turn it on its head, really. We need to sort of reset the norm and reset the reality, which is, we are training people to deliver a service. We are training people to ensure compliance. And we're ensuring people to deliver safe outcomes. But ultimately, we're training people to make them more competent, more educated, more engaged in the business, more understanding of the issues, more understanding of the risk. We're not just doing it to tick a box and say, well, that person now is trained and we are and we're done.
Exactly. And I mean, like yourself, Steve, I've done God knows how much training and training days. And when you look back and you think to yourself, did anybody tell you before you went why you were going, what it was from? Did anybody tell you what was going to be expected of you? And did anybody tell you how the effect of it or the benefits of it would be measured? Because if it's not having effects, then why would you keep sending lots and lots of people? Yeah. And, we've had areas where people have been sent for completely the wrong training for the wrong reasons, apart from what somebody wanted to do just to cover a particular area or a particular element. And I think since the 70s and ongoing research, it shows that 87% of skills learned in standalone training events is lost within 3 months. And only 3% actually gets applied to drive business, performance impact changes. Now, that's no wonder then why so many senior management and all the way up to the C-suite, they're a bit reluctant to spend money on training. And then when you're trying to pitch for certain training, people ask you the questions, or they should be asking you a lot more demanding questions now as to, what sort of return on investment, what am I going to get, how much more efficiency, reduce costs, or the old one, which is, when will I have enough people who are multi-skilled well enough that I can do more with less headcount?
But Chris, this has always been my kind of ideology, if you like, which is the more somebody, generally the more vested they are in your business. Yeah. If they're vested in your business, then they're more likely to deliver better outcomes, have better attendance. You'll reduce your attrition. If you create a variable, variables or multi-skilled workforce with variability in terms of what people are doing on different days, different deployment or different functions, then you give people much more variety in terms of what they are doing. So somebody was asking for the cigar ashtray, which I don't require. So not on camera. I gave that silly habit up. Another good thing for our listeners to do if you are still there.
Good lad. I thought it might have been a trainer there asking for a tip.
But variety, Chris, generally, is received well by the workforce, particularly the guys in the bar. You're doing the same thing day in, day out is monotony. And it becomes monotonous for the individual. Actually, if you're able to have them one day on the ramp, one day in the warehouse, one day, the beauty I always sort of thought is employing a workforce that can be on check-in one day or on ramp the next, in the terminal one morning, doing cargo handling, and the next afternoon on the next shift they're on the ramp doing aircraft loading. I mean, that is, I think, great opportunity for people to learn new skills and to develop themselves. However, we have to be careful at the extent of variability.
Yes.
I think if you're not able, you and I had this conversation last week with a client, but if you're not able to, if you are a highly trained, competent, for example, DG checker, Cat 6 trained DG checker, if you only do that once every 3 months in that function, Chris, so you're not on the warehouse, on the shop floor, day in, day out, the validity of that training is zero.
Yeah, yeah.
So no point training people to tick a box, and there's no point training people if you're only going to use them in that environment on ad hoc or on an irregular basis. The training that people do has to be commensurate with the exposure or the plans of deployment in that area of the business. So I think there's a balance to be had.
Yeah, 100%. And how to measure the benefit of it and how to keep the benefits of it rolling. I think also now managers and employees and leaders, they have to be taught what's important and how to sell the journey and how to explain the why. But they also have to be taught how to be coaches afterwards, so that it keeps building for a culture and a complete change in the mindset of everybody and the understanding. Now, Geoffrey Wade, he made 4 points, and I'll just go through these. One is start by setting improvement targets for all leaders and staff. Okay, now, good thing about that is, and Calibrate, you know Andy and Stuart, they're doing that, and they've got a ratio of 9-to-1 for leaders and enablers. So what they're actually saying is that if you spend a lot of time on a fast track group or high potentials or cross-skilled target groups, you also need to spend some time on the rest of the staff so they can appreciate that all of us in life have got somebody we have to report to, but to help them and be a supporter and an enabler instead of a blocker or a barrier is so important. And that's also part of letting people know why and how, etc. And like all my life now in cargo, so many people in support services never actually seen the business in operation and didn't know all the steps. So if you don't see through a window of opportunity a day in the life of a piece of cargo, you've got a totally different perspective and opinion on what needs to be done and what is important.
But Chris, this is something that we see regularly. This is the dichotomy that exists between the theory and the practice. Yep. Fundamentally, it starts at the point of the manuals where the procedures are well documented. Those manuals generally are authored. The procedures are documented. The manual and the policies contained therein are approved by the regulator. It then goes on the shelf. Yes,
exactly, Steve. Yeah.
Again, except by the cleaner once every couple of years when she dusts it down. So fundamentally, that then, rightly or wrongly, means that all of the practice in terms of the daily process and routine sits in other areas. So in training documentation, in classroom materials, in courseware, etc. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. As long as it refers back to the policy and the overarching manual suite or manual structures. The problem you then have, Chris, is many of these trainers only train.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're training something that comes from a manual that generally is not kept up to date or well kept up to date. They are therefore training what has been documented a long time ago historically, and they're training this to the new intakes, ab initio, or the sort of the green, the wet behind the ears young kids who are starting out in this. Well, he's smiling, Chris, but we've all been wet behind the.
Steve, I'm smiling, my friend, because I wish I was back there again. That old saying, I wish I was what I was when I wished I was what I am.
Well, some people remain, let's say, slightly wetted behind the ears for longer than they should, but nonetheless, but they're impressionable, Chris.
Yes.
They're honourable, and we have a care to ensure that these people are well trained, well taken care of in terms of the whys and the way forwards. That can't be done by instructors who only ever instruct in the classroom environment. It can only be done by sharing. I mean, if I'm in a classroom environment, I don't do much formal training. I see myself more in sort of the coaching, the formal training space. But I love a whiteboard. I love an anecdote. And when you work on the shop floor, and when you spend time on the shop floor, you see a lot. you therefore share a lot of these experiences. It's these experiences that kind of, you know, mold people into ways of operating. You know, if you're well trained and you follow all the rules when you come out of training, and then you go into a warehouse and you see, you know, Joe next to you, you know, not wearing PPE every day for 5 days or 6 days of your block of shifts, what happens to you the next block of six after you're 3 off?
Yeah.
All right, for been here for 30 years, he's not wearing his ear protection or his thing. It's the same thing in process, short circuit process. People say, I don't worry about that, mate. I'll show you an easy way to, or they show you that in the classroom, but don't you worry about that. We've all been there. We've all heard it.
Yeah. And Steve, Steve, do you think? I mean, I definitely, it's definitely my opinion. It's not a negative or a criticism against the people who are producing the manuals or the training materials, because they are so good now. But I think we're at a stage now where some of it is so good, but it's not actually relevant to benefits on the work floor. But as a standalone unit, it's a great concept. But I think that has to be totally rethought now. And you know, if it doesn't, and we don't have more coaching and more on job and mix, we go back to, like you said, referencing manuals and trainers, and you can clearly see an effective course by the amount of time they're always trying to use their mobile phones or you know, get out of the course. You know, if you've got a great training course and it's really done well, and it has some practical you know, opportunity there, people are really engaged and enthusiastic with it.
Well, that's right, and that's where you know, you create a bit of, let's say, colour in the classroom. You can add colour to these anecdotes. You create some stories that are meaningful. You probably use, you know, a few sort of things or examples of how we did things in the past and the ways that we learned, or, you know, the ways that we used to try to beat the system. Doesn't always pay to beat the system. It pays often to follow the process or the policy. But the problem is, Chris, if you've got trainers that are employed as trainers rather than what I would call line trainers, as in people that you take from the line that might do 1 or 2 days training per month, I would rather have a line trainer who does 1 or 2 days training a month than a trainer who does 22 days training a month and no shifts. That's very damaging prospect, because they lose their relevance. They will follow the book, you know, more critically maybe than the guys in the line, but actually they can't use any of the things that might catch you out. They can't share any of the or you know, the challenges that lay ahead of these people. So I think we've got to rethink this in terms of ensuring training is valid, ensuring it's relevant, and ensuring people that deliver it and those that it's been delivered to gain from it. Because actually, I as a coach, I mean, I gain as much being a coach as I hope the people that I'm you know, coaching to, or from a you know, classroom perspective. I think the trainers should gain as much from their trainees.
Yes, I agree with you.
If the trainer's not, I mean, we've all been listening to trainers historically in the past where, you know, thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that, and that's just, you know, it's not helpful, it's not conducive. What they've got to try to do, I think, is get much better balance. But it comes back to the management actions, Chris. The management are responsible, the management are accountable. The others are cogs in a wheel. They're important cogs in the wheel, but nonetheless they're cogs in a wheel. That the spokes and the hub and the frame and the construct is management owned and needs to be management led.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's why I think one of the most important elements of training that needs to be done now as part of the Bring Back Better is leadership. Because there's so many different variables now coming into it, and if you want lasting behaviour, it needs effective coaching and it needs effective measures, so everybody can actually see where they stand within those measures, and even to a point of having like a competence passport or an MOT that's done on a regular basis, so people appreciate the need for competence testing and competency based. And I've been on so many courses where people get a little bit nervous because they're told there's going to be a test at the end of it. And then when it comes down to the test, the coach says, or the trainer says, listen, I'm going to ask a few questions of the group. If we get them generally right, you all get a pass. Or this is going to be a few basic. Now, to me, Steve, that is a complete and utter waste of time. I think there's nothing better than to be tested, to know that you know your stuff, and to know that the accreditation or the certificate or the passport stamp means that you are competent, and that your organization and your line manager or whoever the manager is going to be checking the effectiveness afterwards.
Well, what is your view now then about the impact with things like remote learning or virtual?
I think the whole situation now has thrown up huge amounts of opportunities to be more flexible, to be able to do it when you can, etc. To be offline, to do it one to a screen. All of these things are fantastic, Stephen, to access the information. But to be honest with you now, I think a proper blended exercise where you can do certain things to supplement what you get in a live environment, which also has direct interface with the practical experience. Okay, yeah. And it's like a bricklayer and a carpenter. You can do so much theory, but you've actually got to lay a few bricks and cut some wood before you can see whether you've got a natural flair or ability for it. And that's where I think if they want to get new behaviours now as part of the bring back, they're going to have to start introducing minimum expectation documents. And Andy and Stuart love me for saying that, but Geoffrey Wade, he was also pushing those points.
Yeah. You can't learn how to drive a car in a classroom.
No, I think many people have, though. That's a point.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. But also another couple of points that were made is train the leaders in coaching, address mindset in training so that they can then coach, and then support on the job, which is so important. And it doesn't happen because managers and supervisors now, they send their people off for training. And to be perfectly honest with you, Steve, in most cases I've seen, they don't even talk to the people when they get back from training to see whether it was of interest, value, did they benefit? Yeah. And in many cases, because they have to put certain numbers through, the wrong people go on the training.
But Chris, I want, and this is not supposed to be controversial. Not that I'd ever say anything a little controversial or potentially risque. But look, in selecting leaders and in developing people to become leaders, surely one of the biggest skills that a leader should possess, first and probably foremost, is being able to coach people.
You would think so, but there are so many organisations, Steve, that are. I mean, you know better than most. It's to do with culture. It's to do with fear. It's to do with egos. It's to do with there's very few people are open-minded enough to take a huge amount of benefit in teaching and educating and helping others to be better than they could ever have thought.
Become a leader. So I will. When you're in the supervisory or the for want of a better term, rank and file organization. It's part of my job as a leader, an existing leader in the organization, to cultivate others to become leaders.
Yes, and enjoy it, Steve. Enjoy it.
Good looks like. So when I'm already a leader in an organization, I don't expect to have to be told or to be trained how to coach people, because that's part of the cultivation and the development of people through the ranks. From the organization at the working level through the supervision level into management. If you're now a leader and a manager, that should be a given. Maybe that's part of the problem, Chris, is that we don't have enough people who've had that exposure, had that opportunity, so had those development conversations before they became leaders, because they could be the same person. Before they become a manager, they cannot be the same. They cannot act as the same person. They're no longer one of the lads. They're no longer everybody's mates. They can't go for pints with everybody and scratch their back and pat their, and sit there in the billet or the mess room with a lad. That doesn't work like that now. You have to create some level of separation. However, what you have to do is maintain the rapport, the engagement, the ability to work with your people. But I don't think people fundamentally realize relationship changes when you become a leader. And maybe this is something that needs some more attention. I don't think not just in our industry, but probably in
everywhere, Steve. But also, this is why what Andy and Stuart were talking about with this ratio, that if you spend 9 hours teaching somebody how to be a leader or a coach, you need to spend 1 hour with all the rest of the staff explaining why they need to accept certain things and why it's always more effective if they support it. So you need to train the staff in the behavior that you want to address and the mindset over a period of time. You can't leave everybody else out of that leadership equation. And then the other thing obviously is to put in place, systems to measure and have dashboards and leader coaching, behaviors and quality mindset that is very easy to see from the senior manager's perspective, because then they will continue to support that type of training and they won't be negative or critical about it. They'll see some sort of return on investment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a really good area for further attention and action, not just attention but action by business, and particularly Chris is we will have seen a lot of the experienced leaders, some of the old grumbles, I suspect, but also some of the very good eggs, and the well-respected leaders in our industry will have used this opportunity over the last 12 months, sadly, to take a package and exit stage left.
Yeah.
That leaves us then with a much thinner level of maturity in the leadership ranks, which will need to be plugged. It doesn't mean that you have to have 20 years of service or experience to be a leader. Actually, you can have 1 year of experience in what you're doing, or the industry which you work, or the job in which you do. And if you show great aptitude and competence within your field, there's no reason that you shouldn't, these hurdles shouldn't be in your way. So I do think that that we have to work out how we plug some of these gaps, and I do think that we need to sort of cast our net or nets slightly wider than we have historically done.
Yep, I agree with you, and I think there's great opportunities, irrespective of what the titles are, but for organisations to look at, like you said, the opportunities of people that have left, and just to use them to pass on and enjoy passing on, because they'll also feel special that somebody wants them to pass on some of the experience. It's not a full-time or a major role, but within the organisations to have peer coaches and what we call it, performance heroes, where people who are known to be fantastic at doing a part of a job, but might not necessarily be a great trainer or a great presenter or teacher, but they're so good at what they do and others respect them. They're the ones that then need to go shoulder to shoulder in the on-the-job benefit, because then you start to come up with a proper culture. It's ongoing, management can see it, and management should actually start getting involved as well, with more of them having feet on ground and not just going around looking at housekeeping or PPE or whatever it is. They should be going around and looking at some of the most critical points that are challenges or opportunities for the business, and letting all the staff know that it's part of one journey, one story, and one set of objectives and targets.
Completely agree, Chris. I think a couple of things need to sort of these the myths that you can't have sort of people in your team that are better than you. Well, how lovely would that be? Sorry?
I said, how lovely is it? And if you see people that have got the capability or already are at that level, you should be promoting them and pushing them. And once they know that as well, they get such a confidence.
Career on building successful teams of people that are better than me. But that's about identifying the gaps within your team. It's about identifying where your strengths are and where you need to plug some of the weaknesses.
Yeah.
There are some of the old guard that are slightly more cautious than than they ought to be or need to be, and so we need to sort of democratize some of that across the. The other thing I think, Chris, that's important is that people, are identified early, as you mentioned, they're performance heroes or sort of performance coaches. Those are sort of rank and file workers, I suspect, that are actually pretty good at what they do, and decent, competent people, and seen as somebody that you can be relied upon to do things the right way, the proper way, every time. That's sort of the thing. But I do think that we need to have a deeper sort of I don't know if it's a process, but a deeper understanding of where these leaders come from and how you identify a future leader and how you coach them to become leaders. Because there are those that will be natural leaders. There will be those that that have got some skill, but maybe a little bit cautious, actually want to sort of sit a little bit below the radar and, want to, sorry, somebody trying to call me there, want to sort of, hide away. But actually, we know that with a little bit of support and egging on, we can get them there. And there are those that are really competent at their job, really fantastic, but not wanting to manage teams. And I think you've got to sort of understand people's psyche in each of those areas, play to people's strengths, rather than saying, "Oh, well, that guy, he's never going to make it." Well, no, but is he a really good operator? Yes. So why does he have to go through this, career progression or promotional bollocks that these corporate people put in? They don't want to do that stuff, but he's a really good person. So I think we've got to also look at the ones that are really good at what they do and just want to do that, and that's absolutely fine.
Yes, and also to allow a review time period. So when you go back and you have proper and effective appraisal type systems. Yeah. You've got to allow for somebody, doesn't matter what age, what position, whatever, because their personal situations could change. And then all of a sudden they get turned on to become a supervisor or a leader or whatever. And it might be something that's happened in their life. Never, ever close the door because you don't know who's there. And
exactly
the point you're making about if you let people know that you are confident enough to recognize their capability and that it potentially could be better than the position you're in, but you are motivated to get the best out of them. My goodness, what a lovely atmosphere that is. And not holding people back just because it will make the manager's life easier. And some managers, the old saying where you get two managers in a lift and one of them says, "Why are you spending all this money training these people in this fantastic training?" Because the better they get, they'll go and leave and they'll join another company. And then the other fellow says, "If we don't train them, they'll stay with us."
Yeah.
So
talking of closing doors or holding people back, I have somewhere to be.
Yes.
The first race will be starting very shortly. So sorry to our listeners for the short show this week, but as you can see,
things it's lovely seeing the fashion, seeing the people there, Stephen. It's
I don't know if you'll appreciate this or not, or people will think that I'm an obtuse, arrogant twat. But I'll put my hat back on as I.
Steve, looks fantastic, and I think I was thinking I should do something similar. And as you can see, I'm in a vest, but I won't stand up and show the rest of the uniform.
Lived up to expectations.
Yeah. So listen, just before we finish, obviously we need to make it clear we're not criticising trainers or training materials. We're just saying that this is a great opportunity now to reflect and maybe do things differently, as everybody is, as a result of this terrible period we've had for the last year or so. I shall let you. Oh, look at that! There, look, see a lovely line of ladies in their fashions, and the men look great in their top hats. Mate, we're getting it. I don't even have to wait for the news now to see it. It does look fantastic there. Steve, take care. Good luck. Hope you have a few winners.
Thanks, Chris.
All the best, mate. Take care.
Have a good weekend. Cheerio. Bye-bye.